Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, Kimberly.
It's such a treat to have you on the show. And as we were chatting before we started, I can't believe it's the first time because I don't know, somehow I feel like I've known you for years.
Yeah, we have. And now we just have so much to talk about.
We do. So let's start with like my first main question, which is how has your perspective on life changed as you've entered midlife, right? What big shifts have you noticed within yourself?
I think the biggest change is just this sense that our time is finite. And what do I want to do with my time? How do I want to spend my time? I feel a sense of urgency to do the things that I want to do and to spend the time the way that I want to spend it. So I think that's a big change. And it's not necessarily always good. That sense of urgency can contribute to me taking on too much or trying to do it all, or I've got to do it all at once. So there's good and bad with feeling that kind of galvanized toward the things I want to do.
It's the shadow side, right? Of overdoing or pushing or whatever. Well,
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
like from this kind of a joie de vivre, oh, I want to do all the things versus this fearful, oh no, I've got to do all the things now while I still can. So I ride that line, I guess. I don't really go around every day feeling fearful about the end. I try not to think about that. So yeah, that's probably the biggest change.
hmm Yeah. And when would you say you noticed that or were conscious of, there's a shift here in this way?
I don't know. It feels like recent years. And I think it's seeing friends go through some things, getting older and going through things, and a friend having cancer and then getting rid of it and then it coming back. And that really is a wake up call for me. Okay, I this could happen anytime to anybody. So yeah, so I think in the last few years, I think probably too, after COVID, there was a lot of configuring of people's lives and priorities. That I don't feel like that happened to me so much. Like my life didn't change in a big way from that, but the world was having those thoughts. It was not, you couldn't avoid it. So I would say in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I wondered if it was COVID aligned at all. Yes, that makes sense. So tell us a little bit, because this is your big thing, right? Creativity. And Cynthia, I'm thinking I must have found you through someone I follow on Instagram who shared your book, the about writing a life-changing book, right? And I read that. When did that book come out? So that takes
2019. Yeah.
okay, 2019. And I'm sure I've known about you before then too, but I remember that was like the first book. And then of course I did the sketchbook retreat with you 2 years ago. And then now we've got Paris coming up. And it's just been interesting to watch and observe your creative evolution. And as we were talking about before we began recording, it's been a pretty significant one. And where you are right now is a significant shift. So, you walk us through a little bit of your creative journey and how it shifted through midlife?
Sure. I always loved reading as a kid. I loved to read, and I always wanted to be a writer. And I had no idea what that would mean or look like. So fast forward, I became a coach about 30 years ago. Oh no, 25 years ago. And so that coincided with having something to write about, starting a newsletter, starting a blog, and starting to really focus on writing about the creative process as a coach, as I work with writers and artists and entrepreneurs, people who want to make something and put it out in the world. So that became my subject matter, the pool I swam in, and always was writing stuff like that and books like that for my work. And then I also was writing a novel, a historical novel set in Paris about Sylvia Beach, the original owner of Shakespeare and Company bookstore. So that was it was a 12-year process of learning how to write that novel. I know, and going through the best thing, which I think you'll appreciate, is it meant a lot of research trips to Paris. So alongside writing that novel, I would lead workshops in Paris, and that would get me there and give me a reason to be there. And I would also research. So there was a very big chunk of my my time that was about being a writer. But also this kind of smaller trail, quieter trail, not so public, was me becoming an artist, drawing, keeping a sketchbook, learning how to do that. And I think that was a place for me to just have fun and play. The novel and all the writing I was doing was very important and serious, and had a very specific agenda for that. Whereas the creativity, the art, it was just really for fun and play. But then by the time I finished publishing the novel in 2013, I was really done with having that kind of big commitment for that long. That means all your vacations are writing retreats. So it was such a relief to just put that out in the world and then feel free to move on. That's when I shifted to more art and really studying and learning how to paint and draw, do watercolor, hand lettering. So I did that for about 10 years. And then I was leading a writing workshop in Paris 2 years ago. And I was like, well, what do I want to write? My writing had really grown, I guess. I'll just say boring. Writing about your same topic for 20 some years, you're just like, okay, I've said it all. What do I have left? So I was surprised in that writing workshop in Paris where through some of the exercises I was leading us through, and I asked this question, what do I want to write that's really meaningful to me now? And has depth and meaning. And it turned out that it was this novel that had always been on my list. You probably have your list of all the things you want to write someday. There's this novel that was inspired by events that I lived and experienced. And I always thought this would be a great novel. So, long story short, that's what I'm working on now. And it was interesting how that project evolved because it was very personal. It wasn't easy. A lot of our lived experiences are that we want to write about are the difficult ones. But I came around to being able to write about it and discovered that of all the things I've done to know who I am and learn about who I am and how I live, writing this novel was the most therapeutic to me. Learn just to be able to write about yourself in the third person as a character and look at yourself from outside. I've never really been able to do that in the way that I've done that with this novel. So I'm grateful that I came back around to it because it's given me so much. I've learned so much. I'm having tons of fun. I'm going to finish it today, this draft of it. So I guess I say all this in terms of where I'm at in midlife. I feel more creative than ever because this book also brings the art in the character. I made her an artist. So there are all these different bodies of work that I'll make for the novel after it's done that I get to bring different parts of me together. So it's funny how the different projects we make really make us and contribute to who we are and how we live.
Thank you for the kind of walking through the journey. And what's so interesting is I found in writing workshops where if I had people write in first person and then in third person, the third person became so much richer, so many more details because even though they were writing the same thing about themselves, it was like they pulled themselves out of it without the word I. It was so interesting. I was like, should you write an entire book in the third person if you're like writing memoir or something and then turn it into first? Because it's so interesting that it can be, I don't know, you feel a little less exposed and you can really
Mm,
showcase a character's like
mm.
flaws, loves, passions,
Yeah. Yeah,
failures.
humanity. Yeah, our
Yes.
humanity becomes a little easier to live with, including because right away I was thinking, oh, I can't include all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll because then I was like, that's the stuff people are interested in. Like all the bad decisions that a character makes are what makes a story good. Because you're like, oh, there she is. Here she is in this situation. How's she going to get out? And it's so crazy how that little narrative trick, that little writing trick can change your position to yourself and how you write and see. It's a real freedom to write that way in the third person.
Yeah, so powerful. And my other question for you about what you just shared is like how, because you're really good at producing work and also assisting others in producing work. But I look back behind you and you've got all your art supplies. And of course, I was on that sketchbook retreat with you and it was so fun. I'm going to bring it actually to our Paris retreat. And I still have
Well,
just a couple pages to fill in, but it was so much fun.
don't you just love
And
a fat notebook like that? That's
love
full of
fat
all of your
notebooks.
experiences. Yeah.
So much fun. And but it's just fun to be learning anew by dabbling in art, but then you're also writing. And so I was just wondering from like a scheduling perspective, and because before we started recording, we were also talking about batching, but it's like scheduling to fit in the different pieces and the practices and
No.
the discipline around it all too.
Yeah. So no, some things have to go. Like writing a novel is a major thing. And so there's been very little art. I've got this is my daily journal. And so the art will be more like drawing in here in the morning, even just today, just some flowers. Let me see, there's got to be a coffee cup in here. Yeah, coffee, some quantum foam. So I have to put the visual art aside for now, and it's hard because I miss it. I miss it a lot, and it does fulfill a different part of me. I think the different mediums that we play in fulfill different parts of us. Like you, the ballet, that's a very specific creative act that you do that really honors probably a lot of things. But so I've put it aside. I have a lot of ideas of things, products, and sidelines that I want to make for this book. So I just keep reassuring the artist part of me that her time is coming, that I'm getting my creative jollies with writing this novel, and that we'll tag team later.
Like that, that's very IFS of you. Do you know what I mean?
I believe that the different parts of
Yeah.
us don't always get on stage at the same time. The stage of our day is the stage of our time. And I know this sounds silly, but you just mentioned IFS, but even just reassuring the artist, like, we're going to have our time. We're going to come back to this. You're not done. We're not over with this. There's still going to be lots to learn and play with there. That is helpful to not feel anxious or always feel. I don't, Kimberly, the main thing that I'm trying to do in my life is to just be completely happy with what I'm doing in the moment all the time, and not feeling like I should be doing something else. Oh, I got it. Like there's this other thing that's I can't stand that. So I try to set things up so that I don't have anxiety around what I should be doing.
That's huge. That's
It's huge.
huge.
It's huge. Because there's a lot of, I think it's a thing that a lot of us, especially if you have a lot of different creative outlets, there's some anxiety about that and stress. And it doesn't really have to be that way. I'm in charge. I'm the boss of my own company, my own days. So if I'm stressed out, it's my doing. So I think that's something that's come with being a little older. Just, okay, well, you're in charge. Be a good boss. Make your life the way you want it. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do that.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like the I have to I get to. Just that little bit of mindset shift. Is I've created this life, so I
Yeah.
get to do the things that I put on my plate or choose to take off. But
Yeah.
also what I love, and listeners for IFS is internal family systems, which I don't know why it's called that because it's about all these parts of ourselves. But anyway, it's just recognizing like Cynthia's part, her artistic side, even though writing is definitely artistic. But it's I see you and I know you want attention, you deserve attention, and I'm going to get to you once I get through this particular project or this particular time of life. And
Yeah.
so these parts don't have to battle, right? They can like
Yeah.
coexist.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm going on a trip. I'm going on a vacation in Spain with my husband, and then I'm going to Paris to lead a workshop. So that's when I'm taking my sketchbook. I've been doing like coffee or cup series again in one sketchbook for that. So that's when I'll turn the novel in to my editor to look at. I don't have to think about it. So it's a little bit of a gear shift to just be more in relaxed mode on that vacation, with no pressure to have all that focus and intensity of getting to this deadline. I get to kind of like have fluffy hair and like I don't have to focus so much. So being able to go in and out of different states is also helpful because I couldn't sustain just grinding away. I mean, I guess, yeah, I'll do 3-month periods of really focus and then something else.
Now that's smart. I like that versus having multiple kind of projects being cared for equally the same
Well,
time.
yeah. So I do have multiple projects in my work. So, like you, that's a seasonal thing. Things come up, you're launching new things. So, there's a lot of my creative energy that gets honored through my business, which I love. Yeah,
Yeah. But I like the idea of seasonal,
me
like just like,
too. It
yeah,
helps.
it does help shifting gears. And I like that kind of description of it also.
Yeah.
I want to turn to talking relationships and community. That's my next bit here. And as we were talking again before recording, that you met your partner in your late 40s and married at 50. And so tell us a little bit about how relationships have shifted for you in midlife. Have you pulled more people into your orbit or have you made your orbit a little smaller?
Hmm. That's interesting. That okay, so which do you want to talk about? The husband
Want to
or
start with the
the
husband and then orbit?
yeah. Yeah, the orbit. I think this has a lot to do with what you're about, Kimberly, and what I think your listeners are interested in is how do we live our best life? How do we be ourselves? And I was single for 7 years. And during that time, like that was my 40s, like my early 40s to my late 40s, which I think is a prime time. It is a little bit before you're starting to really feel like limited in any way by age or feeling like that deadline is it's still way out there. So, but I was single and it was so sad. It made me really unhappy. I did not want that. I think this was really affected how I think about midlife because I was like, "Oh no, I'm getting old. It's going to be too late. I'm not going to find my person. We won't have a sex life. I'll be in menopause." So there was a lot of fear around that. And then I had to do all these things like, well, you really just have to live your best life. You really have to just do everything you can to enjoy yourself and be happy and fulfilled. And hopefully that will help bring that person in. So that's that kind of cliche that people say, just be happy and you'll attract the person. They were right. So many of the stupid cliche things that you hear, you'll find him, he's just around the corner, like turned out to be true. So that was interesting to not like just kind of like, yeah, I'm a cliche. I'm a human just like everybody else going through these things. So I was having this great year. It was early 2015. I went to yoga and after class, the guy next to me spoke to me and I was like, I was all excited and I couldn't really see what he looked like because he was backlit. But I was collecting at the time PMEs, positive male experiences, because I just really needed like any kind of reassurance that this was going to work out. So that was March, and we had little conversations before class all the way through the summer into November. When we finally, it was so like old fashioned courtship. So it was in November. We talked after class. That's when I got his phone number and asked him out for coffee. And so kind of went from there. But yeah, I can say more. What else do you want to know about that?
Well, I think the piece with it that's so great is to recognize, right, that it's not too late. I think that's the big thing here of just we can attract what we want, not to be all like manifestation type person. But when we're open for something and we're in environments where it's possible, like who would have thought a yoga class, but yes,
No.
it's
Right.
I mean, you have no idea the amount of marriages that came out of my yoga studio. It's like insanity. Yeah. So it's like it happens.
Well,
But
it's a nice, gentle, safe place too.
yes,
You're not like, what is the word? Like, you're not like stuck trying to be on an interview for a date. The stakes are low. You're just casual
totally.
and
Yeah.
scantily clothed. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, yes. And wearing tight things. Yeah, no, you're right. You're very open, particularly after a yoga class, right? You're just like, you feel so good. But yeah, is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners around that before we talk about kind of female relationships or in general? which is like any words of wisdom for people who are
Yeah.
hoping to make a connection with
Yeah.
a potential partner in midlife.
Well, being in midlife is great because you really do know yourself a lot better. And there are a lot of benefits to that. And then there are a lot this is something I'm always thinking about, Kimberly, like, it's really great to know yourself, but also how do you stay open? You don't wanna be just like, "I don't like this. I'm the person who has to do it like this," or this, "I know me, and this is" it's a fine line. So one of the things that was a big deal in terms of this relationship and accepting it was I had to let some really stupid stuff go. Beliefs, like, about the sex life. "Oh, there won't be much of a sex life," because he's older than me, so that's another factor that also really informs how I think about the future and aging. Somebody who's 10 years older than me puts me I think about it a little more, retiring and what's it going to look like. But I was really proud that I let go of things that just weren't true, and just to be present with this actual person in front of me, who he was. I tried to break up with him twice. I tried to get rid of him. And on one of our early dates, he's, "Well, I'm not getting married again." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So we both had to let go of some things that weren't true. And that felt empowering because it's also like letting go of some of your armor. It's a little vulnerable, but it was well worth it. And so a lot of the cliches are true. One of the best things that one of my friends said was, because I was terrible with online dating, she said, "I think people really like, what are the kind of things that you want to do, hobbies you have, things you're interested in? Chances are you're going to meet somebody doing that because they're interested in that." And it was totally accurate. So it took a lot less contrivance to actually make it work and more just continuing to show up as me. So we did get married. We got married alone, just the two of us on the top of a mountain here in Colorado. So that was another thing, was really making the relationship and the wedding and our marriage suit us and be a reflection of who we are.
I love that. It's such a good reminder, right, on the importance of because I think when people get married younger, one thing I've observed, it's just so fascinating. The weddings can be always, but a lot about their parents, right? And their parents' friends. And it's just always confused me. And I think that you have more of a voice and more of what it is you want, and you're willing to demand it when you're a bit older. And so I love that that is how you guys carved out your wedding experience.
Yeah. Yeah, he was saying a wedding is not about the couple. A wedding is about everybody else. And I was like, "No, I don't want that." And also he's very introverted and quiet. So the thought of a big wedding more than like 20 people was just not fun for him. And he was like, "Whatever you want." And I said, "No, this is us." So it took a while to come around to the way we did our wedding. And I had to really check in with myself that I wasn't going to regret it because I love weddings. You might also have we often will have this story of our wedding in our mind that we want to have. And so I'm like, that story is gone. That's not the way it's going to look. Like, how do I make it look so that it's really something great and I'm not like, "Oh, I wish." So it turned out great. It turned out perfect.
And what about kind of your female relationships? Like, I'm just curious in general, because one thing I feel like I hear so much with women in midlife is like the French wardrobe, right? It's more about
Mm.
quality over quantity. And so I'm wondering if you've observed that also in relationships, your relationships in midlife.
Yeah. Yes. And this is something that's hard for me, Kimberly, because you know what I said earlier about this kind of creative drive. There are these things that I want to make. They really take a lot of focus and energy and commitment. I've found that I don't have as much focus for a lot of people, friends. I've got the people in my work life and then time with friends. So I've had to be more selective. I've had to really focus in on just a handful of friends that I've had for a long time. Although last year I made 3 new friends, like really true 3 new friends, which was unusual. But one of the things I'm trying to do more is when I have friend dates that we go for a walk or hike. So not to do double duty, but let's move, let's be outside, let's do this together. So yeah, I think the quality keeps getting better and richer. I'm really fortunate. The friends who want to hang around with me are just really smart and social people who I learn a lot from. And like one of the new friends last year, she's great. I really love it. She's my neighbor. She moved in and now we take walks together in the morning, which is great. And she's such a great person. She's got such a great personality. And it took me a while to realize that I'm not like her. She's, I think, a raging extrovert. If you see those dogs who are just friendly with everybody and saying hi to everybody, that's her. And so I think this is another thing in midlife to be like, I love this person and she's great, but I shouldn't try to be more like that. That is not my personality. And I can enjoy her, but I don't have to be like that. That seems silly to have to learn that. It's like, oh, okay. This this is this is it's perfectly fine to not be like that, even when I admire that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so often when we're younger, we're trying to fit ourselves into various modes, right? Or molds to fit in, or modes. It's funny, I have a dog who pays no attention to other dogs. So when we're walking, some people, they'll bring their dog over to say hi. And I'm like, he won't pay attention. Like he's not. And so it's not that he's trying to be rude. He's not aggressive. He just doesn't care. Right. So it is. It's interesting how we're all a little different on how we want to associate and who we want to say hi to. And who we go deep with. And I love
Mm.
your idea of meeting up with people to also do something, right?
Yeah,
Versus I do a lot of tea dates, right? So we sit and have
yeah,
tea. But it is nice whenever I meet up for somebody for a ballet class or a yoga class or something along those lines. It's also really special. And as you say, I hate this phrase, kills two birds with one hand. But when I say
right.
feeds two birds with one hand or kills two
Nice.
birds with one stone, people don't know what I mean. So yeah, but it is. It's nice. It's like
It
double duty.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fun. I think too, we wanna have more fun because it's, well, what's playful for us now? I had 50 something. What is enjoyable? And even just being out on a walk, it makes me super happy. I see lots of things, I notice things, I see people. So, it's a simple thing, but I really enjoy that.
Well, and also I think we do so much work like being self-employed. We do so much work at home. I do have an office I go to, but just a couple days a
Okay.
week. So I can spend a lot of time here, just here, which is
Yeah,
lovely. But it also is nice to get out
yeah,
and do other things and see other environments. So it is,
yeah.
it's important. So let me ask you this kind of health and wellness, right? As we think about
Oh,
prioritizing physical and mental, emotional health, do you have any tips on what you've learned along the way?
I love this question. I could go on and on. So early on, it was like 2000, 2001. I was living in Boulder, setting up my coaching business. And that was when I right away learned how to integrate my well-being into my workday. So I was new, just 2 years into having my own business. And it takes a long time to set yourself up and to learn to trust yourself. Like, I'm going to get things done and how I'm going to do it. So I was at work one day, sitting there at my desk writing something. I was like, I'm tired. I really could use a nap. It was like 2 o'clock or something in the afternoon. You keep working. It's not 5 o'clock. You got to keep going. So I'm like, ah, and then and then I was like, just take a nap. So I was like, okay. And I just went and lied down on the couch. I don't 15 minutes. I woke up. I was like, oh, I feel refreshed. I know what to do next. And same thing if I take a walk. So that taught me right away, like, there's no bullying me to work more. It doesn't work. It's not needed. A little break will refresh me and I'll instantly know what to do next. So that has really fed my entire way of working. I will focus for a long time. I'll do what I do, but I know when I'm done. And I know that there's no point in, I mean, it's sure I'll go past sometimes the limit, but there's no point in pushing myself or haranguing myself. And so you asked if it's a question if there are any products that I use, and I wanted to talk about my Shakti mat because have I talked to you about it? Have you heard of them?
No.
Oh, great. This is awesome. So I was listening to a podcast, as we do, as how we find out everything, right? And the woman said, "Well, so what have you been doing lately?" And the artist said, "Well, I've been lying on my Shakti mat a lot." And she described it, and immediately I perked up. That sounds great. I have to look it up. So I looked it up, and it's about half of the size of a yoga mat, and it's like a flat, long pillow with all of these little spikes on it. And you might think of the medieval torture device, the bed of nails. So it's an acupressure mat. You lie down on it, and all these little pokey things stimulate your circulation and your blood flow. It's painful for 90 seconds, and then it becomes progressively more and more relaxing. So I've been doing that not every day, but often it'll be like before I go to yoga in the afternoon, it'll be closing down the workday and transitioning to evening. And it's like going into a deep I'll take a nap and I'll go very deeply into almost like after having had a massage or after a yoga class. It's that kind of hooking from your thoughts in the day. It's like a nice reset. So I'm really into the my acupressure mat. The brand is the Shakti mat. Super great.
Write that down.
It's
Yes.
weird because it's the pokey thing and the pain thing. There's a lot of people who are like, nope. But people like me who immediately have this interest, if that's you, check it out. It's I take it with me. It goes on trips. So it's great for jet lag.
So good to know. Yeah, it is. It's fun to find out these little tricks or these little products or offerings that people are like, this has really helped me. So thank you. The Shakti
Mhm.
mat. Listeners, I will put a link to it in the show notes. So before I ask you my last question, as you think looking ahead for you, Cynthia, do you have any ideas on like your overarching dreams? We've got this novel you're working on, but anything that you're like, okay, in the next 5, 10 years, this is what I am seeing for myself or I want to see for myself.
The novel is pretty big in that, and that is, I don't know if I would say 5 years. That's at least 3 years, just depending on how the publishing of it goes. So that's pretty big. And then the different art projects and things that are going to come from that. I think it's a lot of it is really just continuing to shore up and provide foundation for the things that are working that I really love in my business and my life, and building new things like with the book and the things that will come from that. So I don't know if you need to hear this, but I'm also this is very practical. So I'm maybe 10, 13 years from when I would want to retire or not have to think about working. So I'm committed to really continuing to shore up my retirement account. And so it's a very different kind of focus. Okay, all of these things that I do and like to spend money on, how can I do that and prepare for my future self and save for her so she can do stuff that she wants to do. So I know that's not it's very practical and it's very much top of mind. So maximizing that.
Yeah, and it's so important. And it's like thinking about like when can I retire? When do I want to retire? Do I want to retire? And if so, like how much do I want to have in the bank, right? And it's one of those things that it's not necessarily like fun for some people to think about or spend time on, and yet it's so incredibly important, right?
Yeah. It's not fun because it's hard. There's just a lot of unknowns. We have no idea what the world is going to be like in 10 years, what our world is going to be like, our lives, what our abilities will be. So just doing everything I can to say, I do know, hopefully, like more money will be better. Saving is going to help no matter what the scenario is. So, yeah, I'm fortunate that I've got the kind of control that I want around the things that I'm doing. So, and I like planning for the future. So, it's again, it's that fine line of planning for the future while also really enjoying the now and living as fully as I can. I think that's the conundrum of midlife, like holding both.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And then before I ask you my last question though, Cynthia, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners around midlife that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I did mention it. The ideas about what my sex life would be like in midlife were completely not accurate. And it turns out that my husband is like the best lover that I've ever had. And so I love that. I love the surprise of that. And I would want that for other people to be like, well, there's all these stories about the way it's going to be or should be, or other people have, who knows what your experience is going to be like. I really want, while we share a lot of things at midlife and throughout our lives, we are also unique. So I would trust that. If I think that's inspiring. Hopefully that's inspiring for people.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, that and retirement are not things that people typically talk about. So I
I
love
know
it.
sex and
I love
money.
it.
I've got to bring it up. I've got to bring it. I really do. This is why I love being a coach, is talking about things that we don't get enough time talking about. So working with my clients just on what's deeply important to them and how they convey that in their daily lives. I love those the people, we don't get to talk about that. So I am somebody who likes to have the conversations that don't get as enough airtime.
Mhm, mhm. And it's so important.
Yeah.
All right. So, my last question for you, Miss Cynthia, is of course the name of the podcast, Tranquility du Jour. And so I'm curious how you find tranquility in your everyday. I feel like I know a few things writing, the Shakti mat, your beautiful art. And if you guys haven't seen Cynthia's art, you must check it out. It's absolutely so fun. And
Oh, thank
it's my
you.
favorite. That's
Oh,
why I want to do it.
oh,
So,
wow. Thanks.
yeah. So, how do you find it?
I love being in my garden in the summer and at this time of the year, harvesting, making potions and tinctures and pestos and things, being in my kitchen. So these are just these daily things that keep me grounded when I'm in my mind creating this novel or other things. Just being in the kitchen keeps me grounded and happy, and the sensuality and the textures and flavors of food, plants and flowers. So that's a big part of it. Just a little bit that chop wood, carry water, Zen kind of thing. Like it's just being present in the daily being human. And then the Shakti mat for sure is a big part of it. And yoga and walks. So tending my body.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's been a treat to be with you today.
Thanks for having me, Kimberly. It was fun.